Beautiful.
Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am Holly Vega. Usually, you are used to me doing mimosas in the morning, which we did a little bit of that yesterday. But I also decided this week to do a series called National Guard and Reserves and Their Realities. Basically, we're talking about they're educating me, they're educating you. There's a misconception a little bit that they're only the weekend warriors, and that is a nice thing to say that they're warriors, but we want to take away that weekend part and let you know that they're just not here on the weekends, who they are, what their spouses are doing, what their community is doing, a little fun fact, maybe something that we didn't know, and some things that maybe they're working on or they know that's going on and they're bringing that awareness within the community. So today we have Julie. Thank you so much for coming on today. And I am passing the mic over to you. And you're going to tell me, the fun fact. Doesn't have to be in this order. Who you are, what your spouse does, maybe where you're located, some resources. There you go.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Holly. My name is Julie Eshelman. And a fun fact about me. When I was in college, I used to compete on the Flow Rider. So the Flow Rider is that surf simulator that you see in like the Royal Caribbean commercials, where people are standing up and surfing. So I used to compete in that and traveled up and down the East Coast. I worked at a water park where we had one, and I also am certified to teach you how to do it.
That's very cool. And what a fun fact about the National Guard or the reservists. And tell me which one. Is he a reservist? Is he National Guard? Is he Air, Army?
So my husband is in the Army Reserves, but we are in the AGR program, which is active duty.
Very cool. So tell me all about that, because that has not been touched on this week. And what does that mean, that acronym?
So AGR is Active Guard Reserve. And my husband just got into that program about, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we then had 3 weeks notice that we were moving from Phoenix, Arizona to outside of Chicago.
So I've been in. This is something totally new to you too.
Yeah, so we're just jumping into it. I'm familiar with it because my husband commissioned from ROTC as an officer in 2010. And from that, we moved from Virginia, where we were going to school, to Fort Lewis, which is outside of Seattle, Tacoma area. We spent about 7 years there. And while there, the first few months, my husband was just a regular reserve soldier, reported on the weekends, did his 2 weeks, a month, the typical Army Reserve, National Guard commercials that you hear on the radio. That's what he did. But an opportunity soon arose for him to be put on full-time orders. And we've kind of been in that active duty limbo status that nobody really understands pretty much until we joined the AGR program. So part of the time when we were at Fort Lewis, my husband was on mobilization, a stateside mobilization with his reserve unit. So he worked full-time, and they were on I think it was a 96-hour readiness was part of what their mission was. And so he was in that status for 3 years. And so we've been active duty, but not really active duty. And it's like this gray area that nobody really even understands. And and people were like, oh, but your husband's reserve, so he just works on the weekends. And, I heard that so many times. And I was like, no, my husband puts on a uniform every day and goes to work every day, just like an active duty soldier. And we were at an active duty base. So then after 7 years of him, being on various types of orders, he took a company command, and that moved us down to Arizona. So both of those moves, because he's a reservist, were not paid for. So we moved at our own expense to further his career, which, is crazy and expensive, but that's the way the Army works.
Because even though we get certain money to move, we still pay out of pocket to move. And especially with your family, because they're not really moving you and your family, they're moving the service member. And then there's a little lump sum for us, but it's not a whole lot. And so every move, we always pull money out of our savings in order to do that move. So I cannot imagine doing 2 moves by yourself. So that means you have to do the whole, rental or moving company or boxing everything up by yourself. And moves are stressful. And especially this time of year where you're seeing our Facebook pages flooded with there's problems and issues and things happening. I can't imagine having to do it all by yourself, still dealing with
no resources, no reimbursement, none of that. And so when we got into the AGR program, that changed. And so, this was our first experience with an actual PCS, being able to have the movers come and box everything up. I mean, and unfortunately with that comes some, unfortunate things, but that's a different topic for a different day. And so that brought us, here to Chicago, Illinois now. But with that, and one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand, so it's my understanding that active duty, from the company level on up to the hires are usually stationed at one base. And so within the Army Reserves, and I think the same is true for National Guard, the company might be in one area of the state or in one state, and then their battalion or their brigades and their hires are not located in the same places. So for instance, when we were in Arizona, we were at the company level. Our battalion was stationed in California. Our brigade, which is above our battalion, was at Fort Lewis. And above them, the division is in Chicago. And so
that to me would add so many different issues, because if something happens, who do you contact? Are you contacting California? Are you where are you going? What direction? And
because, our commands are so geographically dispersed, that causes a lot of different problems. So all of our family readiness support staff and the chaplain and, those different civilian and Army personnel are not at the company level. They're either at battalions, brigade, or division. And so we don't have easy access to any of those resources.
You're saying if you're in Phoenix, you might have to go, was it California? To be able to reach out to get any kind of resources that you need.
So my husband recently got back from a deployment with his company that was in Arizona. And one of our biggest problems for a lot of our families was, if they wanted to talk to a chaplain, we didn't have somebody in the Phoenix area for them to talk to. And because it's an Army Reserve, because we're an Army Reserve unit, that chaplain that we're assigned isn't full time. And so for them to even get a hold of the person in California or Washington or whoever we were assigned to, they're not even full time. And so that's something, that's a big issue that I think a lot of people don't really understand, is how dispersed we are. And on top of that, the Army Reserve makes it a little bit more confusing because they have regional commands versus functional commands. And so our regional command is where our family readiness support systems all rely, and that's within the region. So when we were in Arizona, our regional command was from Louisiana to California. Our functional command falls under the 416th Tech, which is here in Chicago, and they oversee all of the engineer units basically west of the Mississippi. It's just, that's not exact, but that just kind of paints the picture. There's 2 engineer commands, one for the East Coast, one for the rest of the country. And so
big geographical area.
And so all of my husband's command, we've been under the same, or all of my husband's time in the military, we've been under the same functional command, but we've gone from different regional commands. So the regional command that I was in when we were in Fort Lewis is now the same regional command that I'm back in now that we're in the Chicago area. And so that, I think the 88th region spreads from Chicago to Washington and does kind of the northern half, or like the Midwest half of the country. Oops, sorry, my phone. That's actually my husband. He'll have to wait.
It's live. It just happens.
Yeah, and I thought I muted it. And so that's, so even in of that self, there's confusion when it comes to family readiness as to who do we go to for our resources? Do we go to our functional command to get those
Right.
resources? Do we go to our regional command? And a lot of times there's, the other one is, one command is saying, oh no, you go to your regional, and and the
Mhm.
regional command is no, you go to your functional. And so sometimes because we're so geographically dispersed, we kind of get lost in that. And with that, I know the National Guard they have a great system. And towards the end of our deployment, the Arizona National Guard actually started kind of taking us in and allowing us to attend some of their support events and some of their spousal events. But, a lot of times, the Luke Air Force Base that was close to some of our families would let us in sometimes for their events. But because we weren't Air Force and because we're not active duty, we don't qualify for those events. And we were running into the same issue with the National Guard. Well, you're not, these events are really just for National Guard. And so it's even there, it's, oh, you're military, but you're not our military. And that makes it really hard because we weren't near an Army base.
And you needed that support.
And we needed that support. And so one of the things, it's always been my philosophy is there isn't something, start something. And so I started our family readiness, support group before the deployment. And I'm still kind of helping with that transition so that they can still get that kind of support. And my hope is now that I'm at our functional command, that's where my husband is now in the AGR program and is working. I'm hoping that I can get connected and work with the family programs here to really improve our reserve family programs and to make that process a lot easier. Because I've been down at the company level, I understand how everything kind of gets lost and doesn't ever make it to us.
Right. And I think too, for you, you have actually moved compared to some have, and it's not a luxury because, I don't want to say that word, but in a sense, it's nice that you didn't have to move because moving always comes with different stressors and different issues. And some things is great because you get to meet new people and you get to experience something different, but at the same time, uprooting and moving your children and all that. Some have not had that to do. You, on the other hand, have moved more than one time, and not having the funds, and then now having it, you see both sides.
Yeah, and I totally understand a lot of the issues that our active duty counterparts face, with employment, and that the things that come with that constant relocation. And while that's something that our Guard and Reserve families do at times struggle with, that is, in my opinion, not the most important thing facing our Guard and our Reserve families. It's the getting them connected to the programs and to make them feel like they actually belong to the military community, because we're often told that we don't belong. And it's really unfortunate. And it's unfortunate that there are even military support organizations out there that don't understand the realities of the reserves.
Right. And that's why we're doing this series.
Yeah. And we
can see how you feel, and other spouses who are chiming in are able to say how they feel too. We should not be left behind. And if you're wanting to be those resources, you're wanting that information, I don't think you should ever have a door closed and be denied those
I agree.
opportunities. And especially when you're already moving, and then you're far away from family, you're far away from your friends, and then you're not really attached. You're kind of like, boop, here you are, do your job. But he's gone, or she's gone, the active duty personnel is gone. That leaves the family just sitting there. We're military, but we're not military. What are we? Right?
Exactly. And, personally, in September, I had major knee surgery done. My husband was deployed. I didn't even consider sending a Red Cross message because he was the company commander, and that was just not really an option. And I begged, borrowed, and pleaded with anybody I vaguely knew to help me during that time, because we didn't have family. Our closest family was 16 hours away. And fortunately, one of them was able to, to fly in and take care of me during the surgery, but I had nobody. I looked like a fool answering the delivery, the Pizza Hut delivery guy in crutches with my little $15 kitchen IKEA cart to put the pizza on, because I couldn't cook. And and there was nobody to help me.
Right.
And I want our reserve families to feel that way, or our National Guard, or our recruiting family. You know, there's all different types of military families that aren't near bases, that don't have access to those support systems. And because we were a reserve, I had military spouses that were willing to come help me, but they lived over an hour away. And so that wasn't easy because we are so dispersed as a Guard unit, or as a reserve unit, and the same way that the Guard units are. You know, I don't even know where anybody lives here in Chicago because we just got here, but but in,
and I think that's the biggest communication of trying to figure out how to connect y'all within a system of figuring this out, so that then you're not you're not alone. And I hope that maybe that's something that we can work on. And I would love to work on that with you as the National Guard and the Army, the Air Force, the Reservists. Like, let's figure something out, because I know that when you work as a team, things happen together and collaboration and pulling this. So I'm trying to connect y'all through this series this week, and let me know how I can support your community, because you've made my head spin. I'm like, I'm going here and I'm going where am I going?
Yeah, I personally, like, I understand why people, why, the branches, have their own separate things, but at certain times, I don't think that a branch affiliation, component, I don't think any of that should matter. I think it should just be your military spouse. Let's
yes. And I think that's something that's reasonable to ask for. If you're close to a base, can you not use those facilities and resources that are there?
Some of them you can, but
not all.
For instance, during the deployment, our families that live near Luke Air Force Base were told that they couldn't use the CDC for the respite care that a lot of our soldiers get during deployment at, places like the CDCs and the youth, whatever the acronyms are for the different bases for their programs and for childcare. They were denied access to that because they weren't Air Force.
Wow.
And that's a shame. And because that's something that, to my understanding, every branch gives for families during deployment. Like, you get so many hours a week, to come drop your kid off, or so many hours a month, and they didn't get that.
Yeah. I don't know if that's for every service. So
I'm not sure either.
No, we're Marine Corps, and we don't, you don't get that. So that might have been something in the past, though. Things are always changing, and I think it really depends. But no, with funding, I think across the board, that's something that has not there anymore for some people. I can't speak for the other branches.
And that's something that I heard, word of mouth, like, hey, your families are eligible for this, but
I think that's the good thing, is trying to figure out those things. What do you get, what you don't get, and then being able to work with that. So on that note, I want to say thank you very much. Also, we were made aware of this morning through an article that one of the National Guard spouses in the shooting that just happened, the mass shooting that happened up in Virginia. Her name is Catherine Nixon. We will be Friday wearing blue in honor of her. We'll be talking about that now, talking about more tomorrow. Stacy Bigelow is going to make us a flyer, a border that will go on to our Facebook pages if you choose to be part of it. I hope that this goes everywhere. Never a military spouse should ever be forgotten. And it's very, very sad. I'm sad for your community. I'm sorry, sad for our community as military spouses that has happened. She has left, her children behind and her spouse behind. And he was Air Force, and then for 7 years now he is National Guard. So she's one of us. It could be any of us. And so please keep their family in your thoughts and prayers. There is a GoFundMe. I will attach that in case you want to support that way. The other way is not monetary, but also showing by wearing blue that you on her behalf, that she's not forgotten. So on that note, do you have anything else to say?
Just a few resources for any of our Army Reserve families that might be watching. There is, the Fort Family with the Army Reserves Family Program website. And then another resource that has always been very helpful for our Army Reserve families is Military One Source.
Yeah, I love Military One Source.
Yes, they are very supportive. And I mean, we invited them out and they explained so many different things. I mean, there's so many things on Military One Source. Just go and explore the website.
Yeah. So if you send me the links, I will hyperlink that along with that, like I said, the GoFundMe that Sarah had found for me this morning. And thank you very much for being on the series and sharing so much information and your experience and your realities that happen every day of your life.
Yep. Thank you for having me, Holly.
Remember that Military Home Base brings you home one base at a time, and have a blessed Wednesday. Thanks.